Everyone, I think we'll just wait till everyone's set up. Just wait for our Health Minister. Okay, good morning Queensland. Well, today we're going to talk about our COVID update, talk a little bit about vaccines, and then we're going to talk about coercive control, and I've got the Attorney-General here with me and we'll talk about that, and then we'll take questions at the end. But after health, if there are any questions about health matters, we'll take those questions. Okay, well first of all, in fantastic news, there have been 0 new cases overnight. So once again, well done Queensland. We only have 6 active cases, and we have had 9,846 tests over the past 24 hours. So that is fantastic news. So once again, Queenslanders, if you are feeling ill, please go and if you've got any symptoms, please go and get tested. Well, yesterday afternoon I had a thorough briefing from the Chief Health Officer, Dr. John Wakefield, and the Health Minister about the supply of the vaccine that will be coming into Queensland and the plans for next week. So we're going to concentrate on the plan for next week. Also, tomorrow I am sending my Director General of Health, Dr. John Wakefield. He'll be going down also to the Coordination Centre because next week is crucial as we begin the rollout of the vaccine. So first of all, first and foremost, we need the Commonwealth to guarantee the supply. If the supply comes in over this weekend, the plan is for the first 100 vaccines of Pfizer to be given on the Gold Coast on Monday. Then we would be giving some vaccines my understanding is at the PA on Wednesday, and then the cans on Friday. So this is the plan for the rollout over the course of the next week. And of course, the rollout goes right up until the end of October. So people will have to realise that there is a plan in place for those that we talked earlier about the frontline quarantine workers to get their vaccinations first, frontline health workers. So there are responsibilities for the state for the rollout, and there are responsibilities for the Commonwealth for the rollout, especially when it comes to aged care. But the Health Minister will talk more about that in a moment. So look, this is exciting news. It's something that I know that everyone in Australia has been waiting for and Queenslanders are waiting for. But once again, it'll start off very slowly, so no one needs to panic or to turn up anywhere. We will be inviting people to come to specific centres when we get more supply, and of course then the AstraZeneca comes as well. So look, I might hand over to Dr. Young and the Health Minister to talk a little bit more about that, then we'll take any questions, and then we'll move on to the very important issue of coercive control. Thanks, Dr. Young.
Well, this is indeed very exciting news. So no new cases in Queensland overnight, 6 active cases, and thank you to those nearly 5,000 people who came forward and got tested yesterday. That is brilliant, and it's so important. As I've always said, we want to find the first case in a cluster, not the 40th case, so we can just keep on control. Now, with the vaccine, we'll be able to have another level of risk mitigation in place, because the vaccine will first roll out to protect those people most at risk of getting COVID-19. There are people working in hotel quarantine, there are people working at the borders who are coming into contact with potential cases. So that will help enormously. So over the next month, we plan to vaccinate every single one of those workers. So there's around 27,000 of them. There might be a few more because people, start work, finish work, but we'll be getting on top of all of them. Then the month after that is when we'll start going to the more broader population. So no one needs to do anything today in terms of getting vaccinated. We will be approaching those people who we really believe need to be vaccinated to protect themselves from getting it because they're being exposed, and to protect the rest of the community. If we get all those people vaccinated, which we fully intend to, that will protect our entire community in Queensland, because we know that's where we've had outbreaks. It's been because we've had those people in hotel quarantine, and we had that one breach here in Queensland. We've done a lot of work to work with our quarantine hotels, remembering that they managed 67,000 people without any incidents, so I don't expect there to be more incidents, but the vaccine will help us even more, which is fantastic. So then we'll vaccinate over the next month. Then we'll be gradually going to all healthcare workers, all areas that are critical to our economy and to our society, so defence, police, emergency workers, and then we'll gradually increase to those vulnerable people. So the Commonwealth will start vaccinating next week in nursing homes, residential aged care facilities and disability accommodation facilities. So they are doing that role, vaccinating those people to protect the most vulnerable. Then over the next month we'll expand so that the state and the Commonwealth will vaccinate older age groups, so over 70 years and younger people with severe underlying conditions, and then gradually we'll get to the rest of the population. No one will be missed here. Anyone 18 years of age or over will be able to be vaccinated, except for a very few small cohorts that I'll go through, by the end of October. That is our plan, and that's what will be rolled out here in Queensland. The groups at this stage that we're recommending you don't get vaccinated, or at least go and talk to your treating doctor about it, are pregnant women. There's no evidence that this vaccine causes any harm to the mother or the fetus, but the trials haven't been done yet. So at this point in time, I'm recommending if you're pregnant, this is not the time to get vaccinated unless your own doctor believes that you've got an underlying health condition that makes the risk more important for you to be vaccinated than not vaccinated. So pregnant women, also breastfeeding women. Again, there's no evidence that it will cause any harm, but we don't know that. So at this stage, we're saying let's wait till we've got some more evidence before pregnant women and breastfeeding women get vaccinated. Then the other thing to keep in mind is that we're recommending 14 days between when you get vaccinated and having the flu vaccine. So people just need to keep that in mind. It's really important that everyone, as you did last year, it was a fantastic response last year, absolutely the best ever, that everyone go and get the flu vaccine again this year. That is really good. But you'll need to have 14 days between any of those COVID vaccines and the flu vaccine. Remembering people will need 2 COVID vaccines to be covered with either the AstraZeneca or the Pfizer vaccine. You need 21 days gap for the Pfizer vaccine and 12 weeks gap for the AstraZeneca vaccine, although it can be sooner than that in particular circumstances. So there's so much information I've just put out there. All of it's available on our website. People can go and look at it. People can put forward questions. And I know I'm going out and talking to a lot of different groups about the vaccine because this is so important for Queensland. And I have every faith that Queenslanders will get vaccinated. More than 95% of our kids get vaccinated and meet the schedule, which is brilliant. So I'm sure that Queensland adults will get themselves vaccinated. That's very important. Thank you.
First of all, the advice to pregnant women and breastfeeding women to not get vaccinated, does that differ from the advice that was given yesterday at the press conference with the head of the TGA? I thought he said he had no issues.
No, that's the advice that nationally has been provided to us. That's the national advice. At this point in time, the advice is pregnant women and breastfeeding women don't get vaccinated. That could rapidly change as we get more information. But today, they shouldn't be. So we won't have many in this first month anyway. They probably shouldn't be working in hotel quarantine. So it's not an issue, and we'll get more information.
Yesterday, the Health Minister mentioned those 240 aged care facilities would be part of the rollout next week. I assume the residents of those facilities don't have to go to the hubs? How will
No,
they receive their
no.
vaccine?
So the Commonwealth are managing that, and they're going into those facilities and vaccinating in those facilities.
Is that because aged care is a Commonwealth responsibility?
Yes, because we've worked together. This is a joint activity, so we've been working now for months between the states and the Commonwealth as one group, working out the best way to get this vaccine out most efficiently. So the decision was made that the Commonwealth would take on all aged care facilities, private and public. So they're going into our public aged care facilities as well.
You know how many residents that would be that would likely receive?
Yes, 88,000 front aged care staff, disability accommodation staff, aged care residents and disability residents. So in the first phase in Queensland, there will be 88,000.
Is that next week or that's over the...
Oh, that'll be over the next probably 2 months. So it just depends on the Pfizer vaccine that's available. So, but we know that that's going to ramp up very quickly, and even more importantly, the AstraZeneca vaccine is probably going to be here earlier than we planned. So we'll be able to very quickly get that out, and that'll be a much, much easier vaccine to get out.
The Premier says that there's 100 coming for Monday. Is that just for the Gold Coast, or is that...
100 people, yes. 100 people we plan to vaccinate on Monday at the Gold Coast, assuming, of course, that we get the vaccine from the Commonwealth by Monday.
What are the plans for those other days at the PA and
Yep. So it just depends on the vaccine. So as long as we get the vaccine, we'll be ready to put it into arms
And those ones on
immediately.
the Gold Coast are quarantined.
Yes, they're all going to be quarantine workers or frontline healthcare workers who deal with positive cases. So you would have seen that the Gold Coast University Hospital right from day one has been dealing with quite a large proportion of our positive cases. They had the very, very first cases from Wuhan, so that's why we've worked with the Gold Coast for them to be the first site to stand up.
Do you have the expected numbers for the PA and then Cairns?
We do, but let's wait for the vaccine to actually arrive before we go into those very specific
Will that be
details.
one package you will receive at some point before Monday and then you'll disseminate that out to the region? Or
No, each tray will go to a site and that's where it will remain because of the issues with moving the trays. Because you can't break them, because once you do, you affect the cold chain. These are difficult vaccines to manage, which is why we're going to have those 6 hubs initially.
And then will they come direct from somewhere in Sydney?
Yes.
So direct to the hubs? won't
No,
come-
they might come into a warehouse in Queensland that's been managed by the Commonwealth and then go to those hubs.
What is the threshold of vaccination across the country before you're going to see hotspots stop to be declared? Like, what percentage of people need to be vaccinated?
We don't know that. That's part of what we're working through, and that's part of what we're watching is happening in the UK, but it's very, very encouraging. The UK is already seeing a decline in cases following their vaccination program. So yes, but the plan is just to vaccinate every single person who's able to be vaccinated.
What's your estimate on the information you have now that we're going to stop seeing borders opening and closing? Is it by the middle of the year, by the end of the year?
We've just got to wait and see. Remember, one case can lead to changes. So one case can still happen. So the plan across the country is to try and get as many people possible vaccinated by the end of October. Remembering you've got to have 2 doses, and the AstraZeneca is best if there's 12 weeks between those 2 doses.
Victoria
By
locked out.
next Christmas, if everyone's vaccinated.
We all definitely want to see this happen as soon as we can.
The Victoria lockdown ends at midnight tonight. We're going to look down the
14 days after it was put in place, which was the 27th, wasn't
so
it?
no set.
Yes, the 27th of February is when we would plan to lift that 14 days. But it's very, very, very encouraging, particularly yesterday's 2 days. 2 cases in Victoria, both of them had been in quarantine for their entirety of their infectious period. You know, the 2 days before they develop symptoms. So really, really good.
Nick, no new cases in Victoria today, and so far they've all been linked back to that holiday inn cluster. Why was in Queensland shut out Melbourne for 2 weeks, given that the previous law was then that we need unlinked cases before we shut the borders?
right? So before we've used 28 days since an unlinked case. That's why we're using 14 days, not 28, because those cases have all been linked. That's the reason for the difference between the 14 and the usual 28 days that we usually used.
When the AstraZeneca vaccine comes online next month, I think is the best case,
Yeah.
will it sort of just roll into that prioritisation that you've got
Yes.
with the healthcare workers, so they almost become one vaccine, just on a need basis?
Yeah.
With Indigenous communities, where do they rank on that priority list? You sort of lock down
Yep.
extended
So First Nations people who are over 55 will be in phase 1B. So phase 1A is this first group I've been discussing that's over the next month. Then we'll move into phase 1B, and older First Nations people will be in that phase, and then the rest of the First Nations people will be in the next phase,
And
2A.
presumably, given the logistics, they won't get fight.
It's unlikely because especially as it looks like we're going to get the AstraZeneca much earlier than we thought, so we'll be using it, yes.
So the fires will almost become, not obsolete, but very quickly overtaken by the AstraZeneca, given the logistics benefits.
There's less of it, so there's 20 million doses across the country of Pfizer and there's 53 million of AstraZeneca. So yes, a majority of people will get AstraZeneca.
If your first jab is a Pfizer, then
Yeah.
your second jab has to be a Pfizer.
Yes, absolutely.
And when it becomes more widespread, the availability, will it be up to people to make their appointments with a GP? Or
Yes.
and
Or a
they
pharmacy,
Will they
yes.
receive individual notification, or will it simply be a matter of keeping across channels to know that yes, it's more broadly available?
We will be going out to people through forums like this, and I'm meeting with a lot of other groups to tell people when to come forward, and they'll be able to go online and book appointments. Yes.
You mentioned before more vulnerable people would be notified they should get the vaccine. How will that happen? They get like a text or something?
It will vary, but yes, some people will be going out through letters. For other people, it will just be saying make an appointment. I mean, Queenslanders are really good at that. We have, for instance, breast screening that I participate in every 2 years, and it's so easy. Go online, make an appointment when it suits, the place it suits. So we'll have processes in place, yeah. But there's no need today for anyone to do anything. It'll be at least a month before we're asking people to do anything.
Has it been confirmed that pharmacies will be a part of
Yes.
this?
Oh, definitely. I mean, they're so good at vaccinating for flu. They do it very, very well. They're involved with this. They'll be doing it not with Pfizer vaccine, but with the AstraZeneca.
You've mentioned a few times when we talked about the vaccine, you stressed that it's going to be a very slow process. Why are you saying that? Are you worried people don't freak out?
No, because you've got to vaccinate the whole population and you've got to have the supply. So we're getting some small amounts of supply, like Dr. Young said, of Pfizer. Then we're manufacturing AstraZeneca here in Australia. So it's about the supply and then rolling out to those different groups that National Cabinet have endorsed from AHPPC.
Bruce Saunders has asked for a hub in the White Bay area, saying it's too far between towns with the sunshine. Do you have a relevant argument?
Look, there are plans to get all of those regional centres different types of the vaccine. I think it's the AstraZeneca they'll get, yes. So there is a plan for the whole population to be vaccinated. So it is going to take until October. That's going to be right across Australia. It's not just Queensland.
Will you expect Premier to receive your vaccine in the normal cohort, or will you receive it earlier to give people assurance?
I think Dr. Young and I and the Health Minister will be in 1B. At the moment, the priority of the vaccines are for our frontline quarantine workers, as you'd expect it to be.
So you just normal concept.
But when we start rolling it out with 1B, then of course we'll take the vaccine to give confidence that the rollout is happening for the general population. I think people would understand that, and I don't want to take a vaccine at the moment away from a frontline hotel quarantine worker, and Dr. Young feels very strongly about that as well.
The attack on the police officer in Cairns yesterday.
Yes.
What does that say? And do they need more protection themselves and out patrolling or something?
It's absolutely awful. I've asked the Police Commissioner to convey my thoughts to the police officer and the family. My understanding is that he is stable at the moment in the hospital. But look, we do not want to see our frontline workers attacked, whether it's a police officer, whether it's a health worker or anyone. And It's disappointing that someone would do that. Absolutely disappointing.
One last one. Anyone that the state gives of the Pfizer vaccine, that goes through the hubs, correct? But the Commonwealth one seems to be able to go remotely and issue. Is that the case?
They are going to manage it a bit differently. So initially, we'll be only giving Pfizer in those 6 hubs. So we'll roll it out there. Then it just depends on how much we get as to how we'll manage that going
Commonwealth
forward.
have different capabilities. They're obviously able to take it to the patients as opposed to the patients coming to the vaccine.
No, it's just how you store it. So you can move it around with dry ice. So that's how they'll be managing it, going out to the second. But we're not going to do that because we want to get the big numbers to come into those centres.
Total number, sorry, I don't think you said this before, total number of people that will likely come to the hubs to assist in this first phase?
In the very first phase, so we, the state, will do 37,000 and the Commonwealth will do 88,000. So that's in that first phase, but we're only getting 10,000 doses per week for the first 3 weeks. So you can see that's why I've said it will take around a month or so to get through that first phase.
That's not for the first week, 10,000 a week, did you say?
Yeah, 10,000 a week.
100 on Monday and then...
Yeah, because that's the first day. So we're going to stand up our systems and we'll have only just received it.
Still hoping to do 10,000 next week.
Oh yes, that will be, if we get the vaccine, we plan of course to use it immediately. And we're used to doing big vaccine
All
programs.
right, I might let the Health Minister say a few words and then we'll move on to the next issue, if we can.
Okay. So very briefly, I had the great pleasure yesterday going down to the Gold Coast University Hospital and seeing for myself that we are absolutely ready to go. Our freezers have arrived in Brisbane and Melbourne. We expect the freezer to arrive at the Gold Coast Hospital today. We will start with the Gold Coast Hospital because the numbers of vaccines coming in will be smaller initially, and we want to make sure we get this right. We have the benefit in Australia that we don't have widespread community transmission, so we can take our time to get this right. So we will start with the Gold Coast on Monday, we will move to the PA on Wednesday, and we'll open up Cairns on Friday, and the following week we will do the 3 remaining hubs, which is the RBWH, the Sunshine Coast University and Townsville. This is all subject to the vaccine arriving on our shores. Can I just explain the hubs though? The hubs are there for a dedicated cohort. It's not for the general population, so I know people are saying, I don't live near a hub, how will I get vaccinated? They're only for that priority group of hotel quarantine workers, our border workers, and those health workers who are working directly with COVID patients or in COVID units. It's not for the broader health workers and broader population at this stage. That's why we have the 6 hubs. For those, I know everyone's eager to get vaccinated, but please don't turn up to a GP or a pharmacy or to our hospitals asking to get vaccinated. It is not available to the general population yet, but it will be in the near future, and we'll keep everyone updated on that. But we are ready to go, and I just want to congratulate the Gold Coast University Hospital that has done an amazing job of setting this vaccination centre up, and assuming it arrives by Sunday, we will be ready to give that first vaccination on Monday on the Gold Coast.
And much like there was a roadmap, say for restrictions easing, do you see the government putting out a bit of a phasing of to let people know when it will be available?
There already is publicly available on the Commonwealth and the state's websites information about the phases, 1A, 1B, phase 2, phase 3, so who is in those categories. Timing, of course, is all subject to the vaccines arriving on our shore, the vaccines being manufactured here in Australia, and when they arrive here in Queensland to us. So there are a lot of logistics around this. We need to track every single person who gets a vaccination. We need to know who's getting vaccinated, with what vaccine, on what date, to make sure their second vaccine is given on the appropriate date and the correct vaccine and stored in the National Immunisation Register, and of course tracking any consequences or any reactions of those vaccines. So there's a lot of logistics. We're working with the Commonwealth. We will deliver our priority 1A group, which is hotel quarantine, police, health workers on the front line dealing with COVID, and the Commonwealth will manage all of the aged care. So we'll leave aged care to the Commonwealth, and we will make sure we deliver on our 1A cohort as quickly as possible as soon as those vaccines arrive here in Queensland.
If people are coming from COVID hotspots and they've been vaccinated, will they be allowed into the state?
At the moment, my absolute hope, of course, is that we don't have COVID hotspots. If we do, we'll deal with each one as it happens and work out the best way of dealing with it. Once we've got vaccine and it's widely available, that will assist in managing any outbreaks that might occur anywhere in the country. But whether or not we have border arrangements, we have to wait and see. Let's just get this vaccine out to as many people as we can as quickly as possible.
All right, thanks Dr Young and Health Minister. So now we'll move on to a really important issue, and that is about tackling coercive control. Now this was an election commitment that we took to the election, and of course coercive control has detrimental impacts on the individual. It's a form of oppression, and it ends up instilling fear in the person that is subjected to it. Well, today I'm really pleased to announce with the Attorney General that we'll be establishing a really strong task force made up of experts to be chaired by Margaret McMurdo. I think she is absolutely the right person to do this job, and the task force will be compiled by next month and will report back to government in October. Now, what we do know is that coercive control can take many forms. It can take the form of a person that has their finances controlled, are told what to wear, are told where they can and can't go. It is a really severe form of oppression that can last months, if not years. And this is something that many people have been raising with myself and with the Attorney General and my government. And of course, we know the tragic consequences and what happened to Hannah and her beautiful children. And we want to do everything we possibly can to prevent it. And this may mean legislative amendments that will need to be made, but we need this task force to do this really, really important work first, to look at what we can do as a government to tackle this really important issue. I know that many women out there are currently in these types of situations, and it's not good enough and it's not on. And today we draw a line in the sand, just like we did with tackling a whole range of domestic and family violence issues. We will actually tackle this really important issue as well, not just as a government, not just as a task force, but as a community. And like we said with domestic and family violence, enough is enough. But when it comes to coercive control, we need to tackle this really important issue to empower women out there from right across our state to say that it is not good enough. It is not good enough to be subjected to coercive control. So my understanding, this would be an Australian first, but I'll hand over to the Attorney General to say more. And I really want to thank the Attorney General for her great work in leading this with my government, and this will bring about real changes to the way in which people have to deal with such oppression. Thank you, Attorney.
Thank you, Premier. Today's announcement really demonstrates the government's commitment to taking action against coercive control. It was a commitment that we took to the last election, and it is one of my top priorities as Attorney General. And as we reflect 1 year on from the tragic deaths of Hannah Clark and her 3 children, we know that if we can gear the system to intervene earlier, we can better protect victims. And I want to pay tribute to Hannah's parents, Sue and Lloyd Clark, and the many advocates and leaders within the domestic and family violence sector who have called for this change. Well, we have listened, and today is a significant step forward in taking action against coercive control. As the Premier has said, coercive control is an ongoing form of oppression that is used to instill fear in victims. Perpetrators use tactics like isolating women from her family and friends, controlling where she goes, who she sees, what she wears, using invasive surveillance to track her movements, restricting her access to money. And we know that it is one of the biggest predicting factors in intimate partner homicide. So it is absolutely critical that we get this right. And that's why I am so pleased that we are announcing today that the Honourable Margaret McMurdo AC will lead this critical piece of work with a task force. She is so highly regarded by the legal profession, having been the President of the Court of Appeal, a founding member of Women Lawyers Association, and importantly, she is so well respected by the domestic and family violence and sexual assault sector. Her appointment will ensure that the government gets this right. We will consult with legal experts, domestic and family violence, service providers, women with lived experience. It is so important to take the time to get this right, but today is a significant step forward in the government's commitment to take action against coercive control.
Why has it taken so long just to set up a task force?
Well, this was a commitment that we took to the election. And let's be clear, coercive control has only been legislated in a handful of countries across the world: Scotland, England, Ireland and Wales. So we are the first state in the country to legislate against coercive control. And it is important that we consult and get it right for the Queensland context. But I am incredibly proud that Queensland, once again, with our Premier, is leading the way in tackling domestic and family violence. We've implemented all of the recommendations of the Not Now, Not Ever report, but this is an issue that requires constant vigilance.
What was
How
the
long,
point
like,
of
how long?
establishing the Domestic Violence Prevention Committee? I mean,
Sorry?
The re-establishing the Domestic Violence Prevention Committee, they were meant to be looking at this and making recommendations to government. Why are we now getting another task force?
So Kay McGrath and Bob Atkinson are doing amazing work on the Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Committee. They go out into communities, they're looking at cultural change, how we actually, change the cycle of violence and intervene earlier. This specific task force will look at how we can legislate a specific kind of dangerous behaviour. So our prevention task force will work very, very closely with this task force. I've already met with Kay McGrath and Bob Atkinson. They are very excited that we are taking this next significant step. They will continue to do work in the community to call out behaviours that lead to domestic and family violence, but this is a specific task force looking at how we best legislate this and tackle this coercive
How long
control.
might it be before we see legislation?
So we've given the task force till October to report back to us. I imagine government will then consider those recommendations. I hope to have a bill in the Parliament early next year.
Are you anticipating that it will be its own bill or maybe amendments coming up?
That's something that the task force will look at. How do we best legislate this? Is it something that requires a separate piece of legislation? Do they look at incorporating this into existing pieces of legislation? That's exactly why we're compiling this task force of experts, because we want this to work. And it's been encouraging to hear the Police Commissioner already talking about how they're rolling out training for police on the ground about how to identify this behaviour. Our election commitment was not just about legislating, it was about rolling out training for first responders and also an awareness campaign in the community. The community needs to understand this behaviour and understand how dangerous it is.
What do women do in the meantime between now and early next year if it is legislated?
Women need to come forward. Of course, there are protections already in the Domestic Violence Prevention Act. Police are already undergoing training. Women should absolutely come forward if they're experiencing domestic and family violence and work with the sector. But this is the next step in tackling this dangerous behaviour.
Minister, as you say, a whole year launch from this tragedy. Do you believe that the government has done enough to address this issue at this time?
The Palaszczuk government, as I said, has implemented all of the 140 recommendations of the Not Now, Not Ever report that was led by Dame Quinton Bryce. $500 million has been invested. We are the first state to have specialist domestic and family violence courts. 130% increased budget for perpetrator programs to try and intervene and change that cycle of violence. We have done so much. Respectful relationships in our schools. But there is always more to do. And as I said, this is changing. There are now a handful of countries in the world where this is a crime. We are now going to look at how those countries have done that so that we can better protect victims and hold perpetrators to account.
It sounds great in theory, but do you believe that it's going to be difficult to actually prove coercive control?
That's why we have the benefit of looking at what's happening in other jurisdictions. And the key to the success, particularly in Scotland, has been that the legislation is accompanied by widespread training for our first responders so that police can act on this kind of behaviour, but more importantly, that the community, that women themselves understand that this behaviour is dangerous and that they can report those behaviours.
When are we going to see that review into the criminal justice system as it relates to women? Is that separate to this task force?
So we'll be making an announcement very shortly on terms of reference. Clearly the issues are interlinked. There are a number of barriers about why women do not come forward. Sometimes it adds to their trauma and causes delays. So we'll be announcing the full terms of reference for this and our review into women in the criminal justice system and the full membership of this task force in coming weeks.
There's lots of consultation done on legislation as part of the parliamentary process. Why start a task force? Is there special powers?
Because this is so new, and as I said, only in a handful of countries, we want to consult and get this right. And the sector has asked us to do it this way, to actually spend the time to consult with experts, legal experts, survivors themselves. We want to get this right. We're taking the time to consult, and the sector has asked us to do it this way.
When will they report back to you?
So we've asked the task force to report back in October around options for legislating against coercive control.
And a question for the Premier.
Yes, Lydia?
The youth justice stuff blew up, earlier this month. It didn't take you very long to introduce or commit to introducing new laws. Why did this take you 12 months to set up?
No, because we made an election commitment, and as the Attorney said, that she has been consulting extensively with the sector, and this is what the sector wants us to do.
But I
So we
asked
want
you a number of times on the election campaign, you never mentioned coercive
Well,
control.
we actually want to get this right, and that is exactly what we are doing. So I look forward to Margaret McMurdo reporting to government in October, and then we will be probably the first Australian state to really respond to this issue. So an Australian first.
Premier, in terms of the mining camps, what does Queensland need from the Commonwealth? Why can't we go it alone like Dan?
Well, that's not actually correct, because you actually need the flights to be able to come into the regional quarantine hubs. Let me also say that this is a good, sound proposal. I sent the Deputy Premier and also the Treasurer were up at Well Camp yesterday. I spoke personally to John Wagner last night about it, and it makes logical sense. It makes good sense, and if you're talking about hotspots, it actually avoids having businesses to shut down for periods of time, because it is contained, close to an airport and away from townships.
Where will positive cases be treated?
Where will they be treated? That's all part of the proposal, and they will be in an ambulance taken to a Brisbane hospital. Yes.
So do you think the detail provided to the feds has been sufficient, except that there's been a lack of detail?
Well, look, let me just say this. Just like the vaccine is a shared responsibility, quarantine is a shared responsibility, and it's a bit rich for the Commonwealth to be rejecting and saying it's a state's responsibility. It is not. It is a shared responsibility. And, we are working very closely with the Commonwealth. There are officers' meetings that are happening, so there is dialogue that is happening. But we would like to see, and now you've seen Victoria as well, looking at regional quarantine. And I know that the Premier of Western Australia has also raised it as well. It makes sense. And like I said previously, our hotels were not meant to be controlling infectious diseases. They were not set up for that. They never were. And, it's great to see that the vaccine will be going priority to the hotel quarantine workers. But, this is a high-risk area, not just for our state, but for Australia as well.
Left field, Premier, why do we need another state envoy?
Oh, this is the fossil. Yeah, look, it was an idea that was put forward, and let's have a look at it.
What would you like?
Oh, well, I'm not going to preempt it, but there's lots of fossils out there in Winton.
Some people say,
Not at all, Lane. Not at all. Not at all. Okay. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you.